Take two of this video where I stand in a basement full of disgusting rugs, clothes, a unplugged permanently water softener that used to be on a well system, which we now have city water, 1970s plumbing, which is all completely out of whack, and a newer water heater that's probably going to go out here in a couple of years. Usually they say it's 11 years, but who cares? That's full of cobwebs on it, as you can see right there. Oh my god. An HVAC furnace that has been constantly running since 2015? We had another one that was a different brand, I'm not sure, but that one was trash. This one's a lot more powerful. But anyways, that's not the focus of this video. The focus of this video is this thing. And I know there's going to be so many of you that are going to go right in the comment section saying, what the hell is Yacht the Limbine doing filming his washing machine downstairs in the basement? Well, actually, it's a Michigan basement because it's not even a proper basement because it's on the ground level. Here's the thing I want to talk to you guys about in this regard. You're basically looking at a piece of history here. This thing has been sitting here since 2009, or 10 for that matter. It was one of the very last machines, good machines, that Whirlpool had ever produced. Reason being is because a lot of people praise its simplicity in design, repairability, which actually made the machine last twice as long, if not more, if you changed one part, or maybe two parts, or three parts. And that was it. Whirlpool Corporation made this machine so bulletproof, and whoever designed this was a genius in their engineering corporation schematics at Whirlpool, that everybody else bought this machine except, well, there were other competing machines like the Maytag belt-driven systems that were used in laundromats. These were also used in laundromats too. These are the same machines. The only difference is they might have a straight vane agitator in them. Running 20 years later as well, from the 1980s, which is insane and by today's standards. On this, probably the same transmission system, which is like a weird. It doesn't even look like a car transmission, but in the analogy it is. This machine is like a car that cleans your clothes. I'm not even joking. Your analogous thoughts of this machine is literally, it has a transmission full of oil in it. It has a motor that's industrial grade. Like, it's half horsepower, even though it's able to handle much more than just the load of laundry. It could probably handle, well, it won't burn out unless the transmission burns out because, I mean, here's the thing I also want to talk about. The coupler inside this motor right here is original after 15 years. Insane. And I thought the thing would go out in less than 10 years because of how abused this thing is. Because of the fact that my family used to actually load this thing all the way up to here. And my half-brother also did this too, because he thought he could wash the most amount of clothes in this machine, which is impossible, because that would strip the agitator gears inside the transmission. It would strip everything in the transmission. That's what happened in 2024, or last year. I'm not sure if that's the case, in 2025, I'm not sure. But we put a brand new transmission in this thing, because that's how bad it got. It basically wore itself off. The gears wore itself off. It could not agitate anymore, and we rescued it. I told my parents, do not get rid of this. It's the last thing you're going to ever own for the rest of your lives because of how smart Whirlpool was back then until 2010 hit. And this isn't a matter of left or right politics. It's a matter of laws being passed either by Congress or current people that think they know what the hell they're doing, but they don't. They never did, never will. And what makes this interesting about this machine is that You can see its battle scars. You can see it has a couple of 100,000 miles on it because of the fabric softener being all shitty on the agitator. It's all dirty right here. You can even see the dirt on this thing, man. That's just disgusting. Yeah, this thing has had a couple of 100,000 miles on it. It's like a reliable Yukon in the 1990s, where them things can go up to 200,000 miles, which in my mind equates to 25 to 30, 40 years in usability and reliability. That also happened with Maytag. Even though this is a Maytag, it's actually a Whirlpool branded machine. Maytag actually used to sell very similar machines, but with different drive mechanisms. There was a belt underneath it. That was a very reliable system. It just was two simple belts, one connected to the pump and the other connected to the transmission, which spun back and forth with one single motor, and the whole thing was fine for at least 19 years until the tub seal, which is the inside part of this. This one doesn't have a tub seal because it's plastic in the outer tub. This one's just a tub ring that fits on there, seals it up. Those things failed because of the tub seal. Speedqueens, of course, didn't have this issue either because back in the 1990s and 2000s when Alliance bought the brand, they fixed a lot of issues that were prone to their own belt issues because the way that their belts were mounted, they were mounted in the center of the machine. It was one single belt that driven the pump and the transmission. And that was a design flaw, but it's still used today because they fixed it up a little bit. The bearings were not as bad and shot. The belt only needs to be changed every 15 to 20 years unless if you use it very heavily, like a lot of the time. A good example of this being at my workplace, they have a Unimac, which looks exactly like a Speed Queen, and agitates to 180 degrees that a Speed Queen does, and sounds like an old Maytag helical drive system, which is their own 180 degree version as well, that I think they quietly borrowed from, which has been around forever at least. But this thing, she is a quickie. She agitates 90 degrees back and forth in a very rapid pace, possibly outperforming the Speed Queen and Maytags of the day. You know, this says Maytag. Like I said, this is a Whirlpool product. And the reason you can tell this is because the holes are spiral downward. There's no checkerboard, otherwise it'd be a couple of, you see right here, this whole thing spirals downward. They used to have checkered board, like the checkered board pattern, in which they go like this to make it a little bit more like a Maytag look or something. What's amazing about Whirlpool is that they never really cared about sticking to one design. They stuck to a lot of design choices for this machine and still operated the same design underneath. Like, for example, I've seen a couple of variants of brands like Roper, which is the one I previously had. And they had a sprinkled porcelain tub, much like this, but this is white, of course, but this is a sprinkled porcelain tub. The previous washer that was here was actually a Roper that had that sprinkled porcelain tub and had a 6-pad clutch in it. This one also has a 6-pad clutch in it. We removed the previous 3-pad one because it wore out very easily from all that stress. But that one had a 6-pad clutch in it, and it ran very good, but it still kept spin draining at the 6-minute cycle mark. I think the transmission didn't get much use, or got a lot of use in the 1990s, so it wore out a little bit. Probably was overloaded as well, because weird thing about that machine versus this one, it didn't fill all the way up. It was like right here. And it's quite strange because it actually got a little lower and lower and lower as years went by. Whereas this one, this actually fills all the way up, which is what I want, because large loads should be filled to the max, in my opinion. If you want, I mean, not too large, but also not too small. I mean, most Whirlpools of the direct drive era actually stopped right here 2 holes before the top row holes to allow air to get in there and breathe a little bit. But really weird thing about this machine too, my particular machine, is that despite the old one not having leveling issues, it was leveled perfectly. This one is not, because the idiot that came in did not level this right, and I felt so pissed off when I first found this out 10 to 15 years later, because what happens is during agitation and high-speed agitation, the tub goes like that periodically, but when the spin cycle hits, it goes back towards normal position. I don't like that, and that's a risky move, because if the tub is moving slightly to the right or down or up like that, or like this, that will stress out the motor and make it very, very hot. And now also stress out the transmission components to the side. The center of gravity is not center. It has to be center. If it's not, you're going to get problems. So even though the whole transmission system is sealed, you basically have yourself a problem with the motor and like misaligned gears and stuff. Even though that may not be the case in some of these machines. But alas, this one has that issue, and I don't like that very much. Like I said, the machine in here has went through one transmission, one set of agitator dogs, and I actually replaced myself, so that way the repair guy didn't have to spend us like $50 just to come in the door and repair it for us. It also went through a basket drive block, which is quite interesting because those tend to not fail as often as you may think. But this one did because of overloading that happened with this machine well years past that I've already mentioned before. But regardless, we replaced as much as we could on this machine and put a 6-pack clutch in here too to make it spin a lot faster. And now I feel a lot better that this thing is like doing that. The cooler thing about this transmission though, even though if it hasn't ran in over a week, it's a lot quieter if it hasn't ran and the oil settles down a little bit. But what's interesting is if you use this thing a lot, the transmission gets a lot louder, even during turning neutral drain. It grinds the gears a little bit, if you may know what I mean. It does a grinding noise, and not like a bad one, it just has that normal grinding sound because it gets really loud and dry under there when the oil thins out. That just happens, normal use and wear. It's actually not wearing the gears down, it's just the way it sounds when the gears are constantly moving back and forth in neutral and not doing anything. It grinds the gears up. And what's really interesting too, and this is with the previous transmission as well, it smells like it's getting hot under there. Even under like 2 to 3 or 4 loads at a time, it can get pretty smelly and hot under there. That's not because of the transmission, it's because of the motor. The motor under here is older. It probably has a bunch of dust on it. And the fan inside there cannot circulate the movement of the air to cool it down. So alas, it's going to get really, really hot. And we don't want that. I mean, even though it's a 1/2 horsepower motor, it's not going to hurt anything. It's just going to make it really, really hot, like an AMD CPU. Another thing about this machine is that its mechanical controls. This is one of the very, very last machines with mechanical dials. And yes, I'm not kidding. These are mechanical dials. The only thing I don't like about this, however, I bypassed the system with my own hot enable. Thank you, Jason, or JK18. One of my videos is if you put this on hot, turn this water valve off, the cold water valve off, and put this to hot, you get an endless cycle of hot water coming in with no auto temperature control, because the auto temperature control cannot fluctuate between cold and warm because there's no cold water coming in. So that's what's very nice about this. Now, if you put it to warm, things get weird. It shuts off the hot water for a moment, but then it shuts it back on. So I keep it to hot if I'm going to be doing like whites or something, I turn off the cold water valve, and then after I'm done, I turn it back on because I like doing that. Even though it's not really safe for the valves in this house because it's over 50 to 60 years old. Actually, maybe 50, I'm not sure. It was built in 1973, so what the hell. You know, the interesting thing is the fill spout is actually newer because it went through a fill spout that actually leaked all over the floor when I was turning up the screens because they were full of sediment. I think it wouldn't shut off one time and it ruined it, which sucked because solenoids were ruined inside of it, but this one does not have this issue. I think this is an older one, or probably the same model or a different model, but it should... We don't have sediment issues anymore because we have city water, and that no longer has that problem. And you can see, like, right here, all the yellowing. That's from, like, the hard water that was existed since 1973, or in the old valves, 1973-wise. This is from the well system. But since we have city water, it no longer has this issue. It's a permanent stain now, which is, of course, the mileage it has gotten on this machine is 100,000 miles, I guess, so I'm assuming. And like I said, this thing's been pushing on 17 years old, like an old car. So, basically a piece of history. What I'm concerned about, though, is the transmission, not like the part that slides up, like the transmission. That part might be going away here pretty soon because of how expensive it's getting. Those things cost over $100, if not $200, to just buy. And if you're going to replace it yourself, you got to like do a couple of other things. It needs a whole kit. The whole kit is like $200. Spin clutch is not that expensive, but they're not cheap either. So, I mean, if you go to the right website, such as Repair Clinic, that'll help you out a little bit, I guess, because they're always having stuff available. But my main concern is the transmission running out of supply. Because Whirlpool has actually discontinued making these machines in 2010, which has made me very concerned about the supply chain of all the parts, even the agitator assemblies and the transmission assemblies and the motor coupler. You can't repair those parts. They go out. You're going to have to replace them and repair them. But even repairing one part in this machine, one single part, will make it last another 20 years. Even if it was the transmission, or the motor coupler, or the motor itself, or an agitator, it's still going to last 20 more years underneath the hood. Because that's how serious Whirlpool was back then, like every single other people, where other manufacturers like Speed Queen, Maytag, all the other ones. Whirlpool, I mean, these are the three major manufacturers of all the machines back then. Even Wascomat, before it got bought up by Electrolux, commercial, they're still around, but they don't produce for the residential markets anymore. And what's even sadder is that residential machines are just absolute shit. And I'm not even joking. This is all electronic, and it's confusing to even turn the dials because they're junk as well. They actually strip off the dials on purpose. These ones you can't even take off unless you would get a screwdriver to get out. And to take this whole cabinet apart, you have to unscrew the control panel, which means this thing is rock solid under here. And this is metal. That's one thing that Whirlpool put in here last year's, is put metal on this control panel. This is all metal, not plastic. Even though this may be coated chrome or something, I'm not sure. But this is all metal. Even though the tub is plastic, but this is porcelain right here, and it doesn't rust. So, yeah. Agitator is also plastic. This is heavy duty, so it's not messing around. Even this is plastic. But this outer assembly and outer cabinet is actually solid metal. I think it's porcelain, like I said, but if you do want to access the internals of the machine, you will have to take this apart and either lift it up or take the whole cabinet and move it out of the way. The reason why we have to move ours out of the way entirely is because we don't have much clearance in here to work on the machine underneath. Like if you wanted to fix the motor coupler or something, or the transmission, spin clutch. This laundry room right here is very, very difficult to work in because of the space next to the water heater. We actually have to take this whole cabinet and move it away from the machine because it's not able to be cleared. The clearance is very bad here, so yeah. I guess we'll move on to the dryer for what it's worth. This is a Frigidaire. Heavy duty. It's even labeled heavy duty, but I don't like this dryer because even though it's 19 years old, 20 years old, it's still going. We bought this actually from a used appliance shop in downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan. We actually have another one in the garage that's a little bit newer than this one. This one's from 2000, and I think the one from there is 2001. So, matches the year we moved here. So, the problem with these Frigidaire dryers is the way their drums rotate. There's no guide roller in the inside. It's just a straight up belt, and the problem is that motor is going to be getting pretty stressed out. And when the bearing goes bad on that or something, I don't know if that's exactly what this drive system is, but if you so as much make this dryer offset with leveling issues, it's gonna go voo, 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 like a car revving up constantly, but it gets louder and louder progressively until the motor burns out. That is not a good design. You need guide rollers in your dryer to help you out with that. This one does not have that, which sucks. It's just the drum by itself rotating on some stupid bearing. I don't like that design. I think this was part of the Gallery series of machines. I'm not sure, but it doesn't say it. What's even funnier is about this dryer is that it's part of White Consolidated Industries. In fact, the higher efficiency models that Whirlpool makes, I call them White Consolidated trash. Every single machine that's made today, except for Speed Queen, I mean, that's of course their business, but every other brand is White Consolidated trash. I could also say Chinese Consolidated trash because that's, and not racially contextual or not even racially, what's the word? Phrase. It's not wrong in racial context. It's basically Chinese Consolidated trash. I'm not saying any racist phrases here. I'm telling the truth based off of studying all this stuff for the last 15 to 20 years. Even my elementary school teachers ask, "Hey Yalik, are you still interested in washers and dryers?" Which is funny because I'm autistic in the real life human realm. There's my face again, shadow of that. Shadow of my former self. That's what they ask because the autistic aspect of this community usually likes to put vintage first and keep these running as much as possible. Another point to drive home here is if you take care of this machine, it will take care of you. The same applies with like most high efficiency ones. If you do take care of it, it'll take care of you. My aunt actually had an old LG that was like well over 15 years old. That was actually a, what do they call those? Plate machines? I think that's what they call them. Agiplate. I was going to call it an Agiplate because that's just a better term for it, I think. That one lasted for 15 years because she, I think she took care of it, which is kind of strange. But now she has a Speed Queen TR 5000 WN or something from Speed Queen. That, of course, is an Agita machine too. But that, of course, is because Speed Queen also got hit with the regulations. They still produced the TC 5000 WN, which is still this classic version that runs in the transmission system like this one does and has an actual brake like this one does. It's a little different. It's based off the old 1980s McGraw-Edison Speed Queens that, I mean, are much better designed now, but back in the day it was a little bit difficult to use with these older speed queens in the 1980s. Newer ones are just much more built solid, like this one. So, yeah, this thing ain't going away, and never will go away unless if they stop making the supplies needed for it. Because if they do, this whole nation is going to be screwed over of the best homemade appliance in the entire industry of appliance making and manufacturing, of cleaning something like your clothes. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed this educational lesson and little info discussion about this whole history lesson of why I think these machines are probably the best ones you're going to ever find. This is the Outlaw By Out.